Right intro.
Well, here is Dave's new 2020 for Wired Freedom. It is so pretty.
But first, how did I get to the point of owning a wired freedom? But first, before first, I want to recognize those that subscribe to my channel based on my last video. I really do appreciate it and thank you. For those that haven't, it's painless. It doesn't cost anything. And if you're like me, and if it's free, it's for me, then subscribing to my YouTube channel is perfect. It's free. Anyway, I would appreciate if you could join. It does make my videos more available to a wider audience, and I would appreciate that. Thank you. Now, back to how I got to the point of buying a Wired Freedom. When I first started looking for electric bikes, I knew nothing about them. I didn't even look much online as far as videos that people had them. I just started looking for electric bikes in a reasonable price range, which I thought was about $1,000. When I first went into a bike shop to look at electric bikes, they were all over $2,000. I wasn't about to do that on my first electric bike. So I started online looking for what bikes were in the $1,000 range. And for the most part, they were 48 volt, 500 watt, 12 amp hour batteries, no suspension, and mechanical disc brakes. So I decided to buy one based on that criteria. And when I got it, I thought, wow, this is really a lot better than having a regular bicycle. It was better in every way. It had a motor. So yeah, I loved it. The only downside was when I got to larger hills, I had to put in the effort just like it was my old bicycle. And I was trying to avoid larger hills because I wanted consistent exercise when I was riding. I wanted to enjoy the scenery and also get a kind of a constant cadence, which would give good exercise. I didn't want to have to struggle up any big hills. So I was trying to get negative on the bike. I rode it for 2,000 miles over 2 months that I bought it. But I did start looking online of videos of people that had electric bikes and started to think, wow, there's a lot of features here I didn't really consider, but they were more expensive. Not having any experience, again, I didn't want to spend that kind of money on my first bike. So when I started to see hydraulic disc brakes, 750 watt motors, full suspensions, I started to think maybe I ought to sell my first electric bike. Was it a mistake? Other than the motor weakness on big hills, I didn't really realize there was an issue because I was comparing it to my previous bicycles, which didn't have a motor. This bike I bought increased my range by 200, 300% compared to a regular bicycle. I'd only ride on a regular bicycle maybe 10 miles, but this electric bike, I was getting 30 miles on it. Downside of 30 miles though, without a suspension, yeah, you'd get kind of beat up. And additionally, the bike was just better all around. So even the brakes, even though I'm complaining now about mechanical disc brakes, previous bikes had those little rubber pads on the rim. And if they got wet, you couldn't stop at all. You got to an intersection or down a hill at a stop sign with wet brakes on that rubber, man, you'd go flying right through the intersection. So yeah, I don't like that, but I would much rather have mechanical disc brakes than those rubber pads on the rim. Like when you buy a new car, you all of a sudden see your model everywhere. Like when I bought my Jeep, all of a sudden I see all kinds of Jeeps everywhere. The funny thing was, the bike I bought, although I'd noticed electric bikes now everywhere, I never saw my model. It was a Haybike Sola. It was supposed to be new for that year, 2023. So when I started thinking about selling it, I went back online to see if I could find it. Turns out it was discontinued already. And again, I never saw my model of bike while I was out traveling. So then I thought, yeah, I really did make a mistake. I buy a bike that's introduced and gets discontinued after the first year. I was like, oh yeah, how am I going to sell this for anything reasonable? Anyway, I put it up for sale after I saw a video about the Wired Freedom. Now, it was a 2023 model, and I liked it because it was a bigger motor, configurable in the controls, and the throttle is what I liked because the throttle was set up the opposite of the bike I had. The bike I bought, for whatever crazy reason, the throttle only worked in pedal assist 0, which again makes no sense. You want the throttle to work when you're hitting that hill and you start to pedal and it's like it's getting hard. You want the throttle to pick up the difference just to get you moving. Whereas this thing, you'd have to downshift the pedal assist 0, which is no motor support, and then hit the throttle. By the time you hit the throttle, you've got no momentum. And again, a 500 watt motor was not going to get up the hill. So when I saw that the Wired Freedom had throttle capability in pedal assist 0 through 5, I thought, yep, that's what I want. The downside of the 2023 Wired Freedom was the rear suspension. When I looked at it, I was like, wait, that's kind of crazy looking setup. I mean, I'm an engineer, but I looked at it thinking that's not configured right. The angle of the shock compared to where you're getting the movement from just didn't make any sense. Plus, it was a spring shock. So I was kind of hesitant. I was actually starting to look at the Himaway, and then finally, I saw a video from Citizen Cycle that they updated the Wired Freedom. And when I saw the picture of the rear suspension, I was like, yeah, that's it. They got a 4-link suspension. The shock is vertically mounted. And on top of that, it's an air shock that I can put more pressure in based on my weight. Based on the suspension improvement and many other improvements on that 2024 model, I decided to sell my electric bike. I bought it for $1,000. I sold it for $600. Basically, I spent $400 on a 2,000 mile, 2-month test drive. If I'd have gone for a test drive at a dealership, a test drive wouldn't have covered all the conditions that I encountered over those 2,000 miles. The hills, the gravel, the pavement, the bumps. On a test drive at the shop, you're probably going to go around a circle. You're just not going to get a good feel for the bike. I got a really good feel for my bike. Like I said, I loved it compared to a regular bike, but when I saw that Wired Freedom, I said, yeah, I'm going to pay double. I'm going to pay $2,000 instead of $1,000, but the benefits are great. When I can now ride for 40 miles on a suspension, on BMX handlebars, hydraulic disc brakes, 40 amp hour battery, 750 watt motor, to me, well worth it. I have about 700 miles on my Wired Freedom now, and I just want to show you some of the things that I've learned about it. These BMX handlebars are not just for show. This difference of a couple inches makes a big difference on my wrist. On my last bike, I had a straight handlebar, and it just seemed like I was way leaned over. And by the end of the ride, especially not having a front shock, my wrists were numb. I had to get those padded gloves, which helped a little bit. But this bike, I don't need the gloves anymore. This BMX style handlebar is perfect. So one other thing I want to show you, turn this on, is a skid plate that I put on. You see right here, this is the front fender for my last bike. 2-inch, 1/4-inch wide tire. This front fender fit perfectly on there. And it's just tie wrapped on. And it's not just for the rocks that you need that. It's twigs, branches, sticks. The tires hit them, they fly up at all kinds of crazy angles, and they'll jam right in here where the wiring for the motor is. I'm just trying to protect some of the wiring. It would be nice if this chain guard was on both sides. It's only on one. It's kind of flimsy metal. Got crushed a little bit in delivery. So this chain wheel was bent. So I've tried to bend it back into place. You probably still see it's a little out of whack, but I have not lost the chain yet. So I'm kind of happy with the way it is. I could buy another chain ring for like, I think 25 bucks. And if it's a problem, that's what I'll do next. Pretty rocky right here. Definitely not for bike riding, just for effect, I guess. But yeah, it's a nice spot. Beautiful day, 72 degrees. If you're going to get a bag like this on the back, make sure you put some bungee cords on it, because if you put 5 or 6 pounds in a bag like this, the only thing holding it are these straps on the bottom, and when you hit a bump, it's enough to break those straps. So put some bungees around it to keep it down. So I don't have to worry about it now with these bungee cords. I'm just going to walk through how I ride the Wired Freedom. So basically, you've got pedal assist 0 through 5. 0 is great because the throttle doesn't work in 0. So when the display comes on, for me, I have it set to start in pedal assist 0. That way, throttle does not work. Nobody can take off on it, and the motor is just inactive. So if you want to hand it to somebody else, that's great. And then you have 1 through 5 is pedal assist. So pedal assist 5 is completely outrageous. I almost never use it. But in order to keep a constant level of exertion, I keep it in pedal assist 2, and the gears from 1 to 7, I keep it in 5. That gives me a constant cadence for my ride, a constant level of exertion, which is good exercise. When I get to a bigger hill, yeah, I'll punch the throttle a little bit just to get moving up the hill, and my cadence will take over to take the rest of the way. Bigger hill, I might have to bump up the pedal assist 3 or 4 to keep the same speed. My goal, I shoot for 18 miles an hour on my ride, whether it's on the trail or paved surface, gravel. 18 seems to be my sweet spot. I'll hit 20 sometimes, but I never go over 20. 20 miles an hour is plenty fast. But our goal for all of us is to avoid what's behind me. So there was a big traffic jam there a minute ago. Of course, I get set up at the camera, not much. But that's what we're all trying to avoid on our electric bikes. So you cannot use the same battery. Most likely the suspension is not going to be set up. On the right side, there's an adjustment to lock out. There's a high pressure pump. It's in here like that. The sound of these spokes